Greetings and salutations to our fine podcast audience. Welcome to 3 Ps in a Pod, episode 209.
Oh, we made it. And
wow, you paused there.
I had to think about how many fingers to put up.
Okay.
And I don't know why I decided
I don't know.
It was a spur of the moment thing.
Jason,
I like it.
Jason was
We
trying
gotta
to
find
remember.
new things to
Do
do.
I still have 10 fingers?
I didn't know. It was just a second where I doubted.
That's true.
So all right. This week, we have us another clarifying question that someone would like us, because we are not very
Clear. We're not
clarified.
clear. We're not clear.
That's true.
We are not clear.
Well, I agree.
We are, yes. So, all right. I'm just going to read. I do need to address one thing before we get to the question. The person who asked this question did not leave their name, but they said, I'd rather remain anonymous, though my email likely tells you who I am. I will just go ahead and tell you, we don't get an email with these.
Mm-mm.
So I don't know where that came from. So if you think that we are trying to figure out who you are, we can't.
Yes.
I do not know who you are.
We don't know who this is.
I
I'll
will
speculate right
I
now.
will tell you off camera, we do guess.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. We
yes.
guess, but not because we know what your email is. We
Because
just
it's
guess.
fun.
I go,
We just guess.
who might have sent this to us?
Yes. And I will say, we haven't been very successful, but a couple of times.
A couple of times I found out
we were
later
right.
who it
Oh,
was.
yeah. I
Couple
found out
times.
later that I was right.
That's
Yeah.
right. And we like being right.
I don't
Yeah.
know that I was right. One of y'all was probably right, and I took credit.
I don't know.
Well, that's all fine, too.
So let me put your mind at ease. You are anonymous. I do not know who wrote this question.
Correct.
Although you wrote a big old question.
It is a big question.
It's one of the Clint's.
Yeah. Throw it out there. Throw it out on one of the
Probably
clowns.
I don't think so.
One of the Clint's.
Question. In relation, and this goes back to another episode where we talked about this topic. In relation to giving to the poor, I definitely believe we should help the poor, but who are the poor?
I'm sorry for laughing at I'm sorry.
Okay, it's apologizing.
You should carry your W-2 around with you.
All right. Who are the poor? For instance, a Christian family member was continually irresponsible with money, and they believed and said that God would provide. However, the provision has often been through his parents, who were not in a position to be supporting a second family. That has left the parents in a hard financial position in their old age. Other scenarios include addicts who use their resources for drugs and then want help from family and others for necessities. Where is the balance in enabling bad choices and helping? Disabled or unable to support oneself, I definitely understand. Disaster and sickness, I understand. Irresponsible behavior as a lifestyle while having others carry you is hard to grasp. Very astute.
And
And I think a pretty common thing. I
too.
have heard this question at
Yep.
least from
almost any time we talk about helping the poor.
Yes.
yeah. I think
That's
it's
been
a,
my experience.
Me
a
too.
pretty common thing.
Which
that
means
comes up.
either people really want to know, which I'm gonna give the benefit of the doubt and say they really want to know the
Yeah,
answer.
I think there are
Or,
people that really want to know.
Like we had to set off camera, the guy who wanted to know who his neighbor was. The Bible says seeking to justify himself.
That's right.
He wanted
Right.
to know who his neighbor
Yes.
was.
So we're going to assume that this person's not trying to justify themselves.
They really want to know.
They want to know.
Boundaries are super important when it comes to family members and people that you know their stories. And my experience has been, it's not so much that the person doesn't know they probably shouldn't give the money to the poor. They just don't want to draw a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a addict in your life, almost everywhere there's an addict, there is a codependent person somewhere nearby
Yes.
that continues to support them in their addiction. That's true, and that's wrong, and that is not helping the poor. But if I'm talking about the person on the street that I don't really know, I'm not having a conversation with, and they look like to me in the moment, they might, that's what I imagine a drunk looks like, or that's what I imagine a drug addict looks like, or I can't imagine in the great country like ours that there's a way that a person like that could be on the street. I'm going to say at that point, you don't have enough information to determine that they don't need your help.
Yeah.
And there's only a limited amount of help you're probably going to give them in the little bit of time you're with them. And if you're willing to give them more time than that, you're probably going to figure out whether they need to have a boundary drawn or not.
I agree with that.
And I'll say that for me, because I hear in this question something that I think I really struggled with for years in my life, was that this whole idea of, when I give, I want to make sure that my gift will not be wasted.
Right.
I want to make sure that my gift is not going to go to a person who doesn't truly need it. And so I'll say this, the thing that got me, that I got hung up on, that I finally had to get over, was that the more time I spend trying to control the outcome of the gifts that I give to those in need, really just continues to perpetuate a sense in me that this is my stuff. And it got real clear to me along the way that if I want to stay in that mindset, I am probably never going to develop my heart into the generous heart that I know God has for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that way, I don't think I will ever be truly mirroring God in my own life, which is what I want to be. I want to be formed into the image of Christ. And you could make a case that much of the love and grace and gifts given to us through Christ have been, quote unquote, wasted.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's the standard, then even Jesus didn't live up to that standard.
Right.
Right? And so it finally got clear to me of, well, and I wouldn't go so far as say, well, I'm just going to give indiscriminately. I think what Ed said is also true. Boundaries are important. But at the same time, I have to do some real hard soul searching in my own heart and find out, when I see someone and they seem to be in need, what happens in me?
Mm-hmm.
Do I immediately start to go, well, I don't know, let's figure this out, and or is my heart turned towards them so that I can love them?
Mm-hmm.
Do I ask the question, what does love require of me right now? Or do I say, what's the least that I can do? Or let me justify what I'm about to do to make sure that I'm in control of everything.
That's right.
And I found that to be not a place that I wanted to end up spiritually. And it just didn't seem to fit in line with what Jesus was like.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
for me, I had to get
I think
over
that's
that.
a good point. We give because of who God is, not because
Yes.
of who this person is, right?
That's right.
I also think an important thing for us to I was trying to think about this because I'm just trying to think practically for the person how this works out. I think Ed's already answered the part about if it's a family member. Enabling looks different when it's a family member and when it's
That's
someone
right.
on the street.
You have to know somebody's story to enable them.
Yes.
Well, and you also,
Me giving a person who is an active drug user on the street, if I take them and get them something to eat, I haven't enabled their lifestyle.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm not around long enough to enable them.
the truth is, if I have a child who's a drug addict and I also give them a meal, I'm not enabling them. There's a difference. There's a difference. When most people mean enabling, they're meaning I let you move back into the home and I support you while you're still actively using. That is a different level that you're not going to do for a person on the street, but you would do for a child. So if that's what you're talking about, I think we've already talked about that. That's a different level. But like, even that child, you to say, hey, I don't want you to starve to death, so I'm going to give you a meal.
That's right.
That isn't a form of enablement like other things might be. So I would say we live in our world is different than Jesus' world insofar as, and I talk about our world, I'm talking about Coweta County, Georgia. I can't speak to other places, but where we are at is different in as far as how much we interact with people below the poverty line or who are houseless or any, different thing that we would call, I need to do acts of charity for this person. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, when you give alms to the poor, when you do this for the poor, but they're poor. I mean, think of more like, you mentioned Haiti in the last episode. Think of places like a populated area in Haiti or in India where you see there's just, it's everywhere on the street corners, people who are, sick and homeless and in need. Jesus is talking about in these small communities, when you see these people and you're seeing them all the time, this is how to interact. We're in a different thing, and this isn't to lessen anything. What I'm saying is Most of us live in such a world, we have carefully crafted our lives to such a place where I don't have to be around anyone who's poor if I don't want to. I might have to pass them on the street in Atlanta, but even in Coweta County, I'm very rarely going to see you. I might see you while I'm in the safety of my car, and I lock my doors when you're standing at the Walmart thing, asking for help, and you have a sign, but I don't really have to interact with. That's not an interaction. Seeing someone and explaining to my kids, why does that person have a sign? That's not an interaction with that person. So all of that to say, I would say to someone, our instruction to take care of the poor still applies today. So what I would encourage you to do, if you're very concerned about enabling someone, I would go get involved with a ministry where they are actively bridging the gap here in Coweta County. Or even we know, because many people, you mentioned addiction, Coweta Force, where they are helping people who are in addiction and often because of that have lost jobs or lost things. Get involved with an organization that is doing something. Get to know some people. Get to know their stories. Do what you can for them. I think it will change your perspective. It will be closer to the world Jesus lived in, where they might have known. I think about the stories where a guy's been paralyzed his whole life. Jesus tells him, pick up your mat and go. And the whole town is like, that's the dude. I wouldn't know the poor guy standing on the street, and everyone in town would. It's a different world. If you get involved with some people and see the mess of their life, it may open your heart more to this compassion.
Well, and I would say it's different even than I've had people say to me, but I do know the stories because my brother is like that. I'm going, it's different. It's different with your brother that you know all the stories and you've watched him take advantage of your parents. And honestly, your parents enable it, and you can't really blame them. So you have all that, or you do blame them, all of that kind of stuff. I'm talking about get involved with a person you don't know, and you don't know all the background. And again, do what we're often called to do, which is just care enough to listen. You don't even have to do anything else. I mean, listen to them, listen to God, and it just starts with opening your life up to the fact, I have a responsibility. I've been given so much. And I come back to that. You said this a minute ago about beginning to think it belongs to me. If I can continue to remind myself that this thing we say of I've been blessed, you got to really buy that. I mean, you got to really buy into, I have been given. I did not earn. And if you get that, then you get, if I've been given, I have a responsibility. And it's not just a tithe. There was a long time I hated giving and all of that, and I just had some great people in my life that just began to disciple me to be around, like y'all have talked about. And then I had a guy at one point say, you should just carry around some money and not a part of your tithe to God, some money that you can afford that you know you're not going to use in any way but to give away. You're just going to give it away. You're going to walk around and ask God, who should I give this to that I don't know? Who should I give this to? And you get the joy of God putting you on assignment. I mean, all of a sudden you're somewhere and somebody needs some money and you already had it. And you can't use it for yourself. It's the part of the person that explained it to me. It's the person that owned the field in the Old Testament, and God said, don't cut the corners of your field. Wasn't a part of their tithe. It's just part of, that's the way God said, leave that for the poor. Just leave that for the poor. So if you really care about this, you can't make it so personal of, I know this situation where it goes bad. I do too. I know situations where people have taken advantage of stuff. Okay, that's the way that is. My goodness, it puts me in good company with God. There ain't any of us talking that haven't taken advantage of God. So
I just think you got to be real careful. And it goes back to what I said earlier, to just be real careful when you're asking questions like this. Why? Why am I so concerned about being manipulated, taken advantage of, or the other person wasting my gift? I'm not saying we should be, we shouldn't have judgment. And I think we've said that very clearly. But at the same time, it says something about me when that's all I can think about when I think about giving to the poor.
Well, and I
is
do.
what are they going to do? And is it going to be misused?
And we now know, because once again, it's just a different world that we live in. We now have organizations that are set up to help people in need. Here's what I frequently try to do is I think often when we think of giving to the poor, we think in terms of, I'm seeing someone on the street, should I give them the $50? The truth is there are more poor in our county that are working poor as well,
Yes.
Cool.
that are not houseless. Some people
Or they are working poor that are houseless.
or working
I
poor
mean,
that are
now
houseless.
that we've opened the emergency shelter here, one of the people that has been every time we've been open is a person that's serving some of you in Kroger.
Mhm.
They work every day at Kroger and live in their car except when there's a shelter open that will allow them a place to sleep inside. They work every day.
And so you see these kind of things where we go, there are these things, and we know, and I hear this when people talk about giving the poor, well, what's it really going to do? It's going to give them one meal. It's going to do this. So this is what I would really encourage you is I would start giving the majority that you're going to give. Obviously, we as a church give to these organizations, but you say above my tithe, like Ed said, this extra money, just start saying, hey, I'm gonna pick a different. That was one thing my wife, and we did it with our kids because we wanted to instill this in our kids. We all picked a different organization throughout the year, and every month we said, hey, we're gonna give a large lump sum to this organization, and then we're gonna pray for those people every day throughout the month. And it was a great thing for us as a family to just do, but it would help you to be able. And then if you can give to, because we gave to several local organizations here. And then I can say to somebody when I meet them and they say, hey, I don't mind. Yeah, I can give you $20 for this. But have you heard of Bridging the Gap? Do you know about Coweta Force? Can I help you? Because they're going to have resources and they have people who their entire job is just to sit and help you figure out what's next for you. And it allows you to also not have that thing that I think all of us feel, that little bit of guilt every time someone asks, and I don't have the money, and I go, oh, I must be a bad Christian because I don't have any cash to help this person. It allows you to go, no, I have been caring for the poor. And maybe the best thing I can do for this person who's poor is have a conversation with them.
That's right.
And to help get them where they need to go.
Well, I have, and I don't, not everybody will know this little song, but when I have spent the money, and I don't do that anymore, I just have budgeted in my life now that I'm going to give when I feel led by the Lord to do it with people. When I'm asked by somebody that I don't have the money at that point to give, I sing in my head, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give I thee. And so I pray for them right on the spot. They ask me, and I say, man, I don't have anything to give you, but I'm a Christian. I'd be happy to pray for you if that's okay with you. Yeah. And if it's not, when they say, oh no, man, I was hoping some money, I go, okay. And then when I get back in my truck, I pray for them anyway.
That's right.
Well, we know as a church, we've read this book now a few times together, but there's this book called When Helping Hurts.
Yes.
And the whole point behind it, and several missions organizations, charitable organizations have now really kind of used this as their motivating thing, that there is a way in just giving, hey, I'm just going to dump money at your feet. And we use and it is enabling. It enables bad behavior, but it also keeps people stuck. Good-hearted people who have good intentions to help themselves, help their families, but don't have all either the knowledge they need or the additional kind of support and resources relationally that they need. Because I thought a person I met recently, one of the things we did as our families will go, and we go with some friends from church, and we give breakfast out at Bridging the Gap, where they give groceries to people in need. I'm standing there with two of my daughters, and we're talking to this older man. He's 65 years old, had worked. He's still trying to get back and get work. He had retired, and after the Noonan tornado, a lot of the people who were living in rented homes at that point, when the insurance paid out the landlord, he could build a much nicer home that he could charge extra money. This guy and his wife, I think they were somewhere 65, 70, they're living in their car in the woods, and his wife has, a disease, and he's just crying as we're sitting, and then my daughters are hugging him, and we're praying for him, and we're having this whole thing. And I realized for him, there are a lot of people I know in our church, and I know you may hear that story and go, well, if he'd managed his money better, he could have had a better thing. There are a lot of people I know personally. I have some people in my life that are very close to me, and we're doing a rock solid financial course, and I thought, this person doesn't go to our church, and I thought they need to come and do this thing because they are living in a very nice house and they have some stuff. They have not managed their money well, but because of relational support, they had a person in their life who they were related to who died and left them some money that covered a bunch of debts. That's relational support that we take for granted, that not everyone has that. And so there's a lot of different things and a lot of different networks that we know it takes all of that to support a person. And so we also as a church, when we're helping with organizations and stuff, we're not coming in saying, hey, we want to enable everyone and do this. There may require more support than you personally can give. So my urging to you would be, when you see us as a church involved in something, are you helping at Christmas in Coweta? Are you getting involved with all the different things that we do? Have you gotten involved with any of these organizations we support? Those would be my encouragement to anyone who's trying to figure out. Jesus' goal was not that you personally would rescue a poor person.
No.
His goal was that you would become the kind of person, as Jason's already said, that your heart would be moved in compassion and that you would learn this money isn't for me. There's an upcoming sermon that I've already been kind of thinking about, and there's a ancient church father from the 4th century who wrote, and I can't remember whose name it is, I'll find it later and say it, but I wrote it down because I thought we need to use this at some point. He said, what do you call a person who steals from another person? You call them a thief. And he says, well, those clothes in your closet do not belong to you. Mm-hmm. He goes, the extra clothes in your closet, they were meant for the poor. And the shoes on your feet that you don't wear anymore, they were also meant for the poor. And the money that you've hoarded up somewhere else, it was not meant for you. So what should we call that person? He wrote to the early church. And I thought, man, that is powerful words. Those of us who have more than we need, as John the Baptist said, if you have 2 shirts and someone's got 0 shirts, that one of those shirts belongs to someone else. And we look at it and we go, man, that belongs to me. And it all belongs to me. I think those are heavy words, and obviously they're poetic. And before you want to get into land rights and property rights and how that goes.
Are you a communist, Nathan?
That's another one. I think it's Oscar Romero said that. He said, when I feed the poor, everyone calls me a saint. When I ask why they're poor in the first place, they call me a communist. And all of this is a part of what Jesus has called us to do, is to be the kind of people who say, none of this stuff was mine.
Yep.
It belongs to God. And what is God doing with his resources? And he is showering them on people all the time.
You mentioned the financial course that as we're taping this, it will have already happened by the time this drops. But the very first thing that we're going to be doing in that course is it's listing out all of our possessions. And then I'm going to be challenging everyone in the course to sign at the bottom away your rights to it.
That's good.
Because it starts, and the point of the whole seminar is you have to start with this premise that I'm a steward of my possessions.
Exactly.
This does not belong to me. It was given for a time. I am using it for a time. How am I using it? And it's just a symbolic thing of, like you said, my stuff doesn't belong to me. It belongs to God. It was given to me. And that changes your mindset.
Yeah.
It changes the way you look at not only your own stuff, but everybody else that you come in contact with.
Jason, the thing I love about that is I think it's practical for even the majority of us is to just begin there is by praying it. I had mentioned the thing about every month we gave to a different organization, but part of that was I'd started anything that was not a need in our life, groceries, our mortgage payment, gas for the car, these things that we need, luxury, even going out to eat, going to do this. My wife and my kids and I, before we would sit down, or we'd sit down at the meal, or we'd go to the movies, we would sit and pray, and we'd say, God, we know you gave us all this money anyway. We are thanking you for the fact that occasionally we get to use this money for extra stuff for us that we didn't even need. What a blessing that is. Help us to remember this, though, next time, that maybe the next time we want to go to the movies, or the next time we're going to do this, maybe we could be grateful for this time and use some of that money for something else. And that was it. We would start saying, hey, we're going to take some of the money we would have used to go to the movies, or some of this. And it becomes a part of, for me, for my children, I was hoping to train them in seeing movies are a luxury,
Yeah.
which is
Well, God's okay with it. I mean, you can't
Sure.
read all of the
Absolutely.
scripture to get that.
sure.
It is all given to me. It's all a gift. But, Paul's real clear. Some of it God gives for our enjoyment.
Oh, absolutely.
There is for our enjoyment. And, we have to understand that too.
Yeah.
But it does still all belong to Him.
That's right.
Mhm.
I think the line for me it comes over is there's a line between feeling guilty and then becoming a generous person.
Mhm.
Because I hear what you're saying, and many times it has driven me to every time I spend money on myself for something I
feel
enjoy,
guilty.
I feel
Sure.
real guilty about it. Well, that's not the heart of God either.
No.
So it's coming to that place where, like you said, when I do set aside specific money and time and effort that I will invest and give and allow God to use that. But then I also have the part that I get to enjoy too,
That's right.
and figuring out where generosity lies for me.
I think,
Right.
and I think beginning and ending all of that with prayer
Yes.
and covering it, because there becomes the point where the luxury part becomes, well, that's mine,
Mm-hmm. That's right.
and realizing that was a gift too.
It was.
And that was the thing we would say all the time is thank you for allowing us to use this in this way,
Yep.
because it wasn't mine. I want to live from a place of gratitude.
Mhm.
I want to live from a place that I don't feel guilty about spending. I'm thankful.
Yes.
But there becomes a way I stop being thankful and I start becoming entitled.
There you go.
Yeah.
Who's to tell me I can't go 7 times? Who's to tell me I can't go 9? Who's to tell me I can't go this much? Because that's mine.
That's right.
I want to be grateful for what I do have.
Yes.
Back when I was young and a smart aleck. Now I'm
Back
old.
then?
Now I'm old in that way. When people would say, I can't afford to tithe, I said, well, then you should start praying that God will reduce your income to where you can afford it.
Mm,
Mhm.
yeah.
Maybe if you got down to where you only made $100 a week, could you afford to give 10?
Mm.
All right.
If you can't afford to give 1,000 that you make, maybe you need to make less.
Yes.
Mhm.
You're such a smart aleck.
Mhm. So snarky.
That's right. Well, I hope we cleared that up. But I appreciate the question because, like I think we all said at the beginning, that is a question that comes up very frequently when we talk about this topic. It was great to be able to clarify that and hopefully give some direction to you. I hope that helps. If not, send us more. We would love to talk more and get even more clear if we're not. So, I don't remember what next week is, but
We have a question.
we
I
do
saw
have
we
a
have
question.
one waiting.
You know what? I think I have it. Let me look.
I
real
think it's
quick.
about who's going to coach the Falcons.
Well, that's a mystery no one. Someone wants us to clarify something we said in episode 200
Oh, it's another clarifying.
about being theologically conservative, which we are
Said
not,
we were.
or not.
We're not.
There are some people who are more theologically conservative.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right.
I think that was the question.
That's the question.
All right.
So we will get into that next week, whenever that is.
Okay.
I think we're done taping for this.
Yeah, for
go-round.
today.
I
But
think
it'll
for
be
today.
next week for them.
I
For them, it'll be next
I bet
week.
Charlie's already edited this part out.
Maybe. I hope. God bless him. All right. So we'll see you next time.